Okay, I wanted to make this video so that we can all be on the same page for how the online discussions are going to go. So if you go to the main D2L page for the course, we can just scroll down in the content browser to the assignment instructions, click on online discussion instructions, and boom, there we have it. Here are the discussion. This is how the discussions are going to work. Now, in the syllabus, you'll remember that there were two types of discussion that are happening, either class-wide discussions or group discussions. So I want to spend a little bit of time walking through how each of these work. The class-wide discussions are going to be a little more straightforward, but I especially want to spend some time talking about the small group discussions because that's going to have a little bit more structure to how that works. And you should think about what I'm doing here. I'm trying to mimic for us the kinds of conversations that we typically have in real classroom, or not real, but in physical classroom spaces. So in my classes, when I have face-to-face kinds of classes, we typically have conversations as an entire class. And or we break apart into groups and we have conversations in those groups before coming back together as a class. So what I'm doing here is really mimicking those two types of discussions. The goal here, of course, is for us, for you to deepen your learning and understanding of the material. And both and the questions are organized to try and make that happen. And these two types of discussions are organized to help you deepen your own understanding of particular issues that arise when we think about these general sociological theories. So let's talk first about the class-wide discussions. They're probably the simpler of the two to think through. These are discussions where all class participants will be involved. So everyone in the class is going to be on the same discussion board talking about the question together. You will typically be asked to reflect on some key concept and then share some illustration of that or reflect back. I sometimes give you an example of something and ask you to talk about it in the context of the particular theorist that we're talking about. But my goal here is for you to share some information, some insight, some understanding with the entire class, and for you to then be able to see what others are saying about a particular issue. So for example, you'll be asked to share an example of a social fact. This is a key concept from Durkheim. And so I want you to share a particular example, explain how it is how it illustrates Durkheim's concept of a social fact. And then what's really important here is that you go back into the discussion board and see what others have written about this. What other kinds of examples did your classmates come up with? And it's actually in that process that you'll begin to really deeply understand the concept. Okay, so think about this as a moment where everyone in the class is going to share an example as they understand the concept, and then you can refine your own example if it turns out you weren't really reflecting the concept we're talking about, and you can see how others approach and find examples of this particular concept of a social fact or whatever it is we're discussing for that week. So that's all of that is to say it's really important for you to go back into the discussion board and see what others are writing, even after you've posted your own example. I will often be in there asking for you to clarify or expound on your particular example, or relating other kinds of examples that are similar to it, something like that. And you should feel free to do the same thing when others have posted. So while I don't require you as a part of the discussion to respond to others' posts, I strongly encourage it, and I may be asking others of you to connect your example to other people's examples and so on, so that we can really have a discussion out of this. So that's what the class-wide discussions are going to look like. Again, they're going to happen between that Tuesday and Thursday, so the midweek discussions each week. All right. So again, some of these will be class-wide discussions. More of them actually will be group discussions. And so let's talk a little bit about how that's going to work. What I'm going to do is place you into a group. There's right now, at the time I'm recording this, I think there are 18 people in the class. This can adjust as we go along, but the key thing I'm going to be doing is placing people into groups of roughly four people in per group. in order to sort of facilitate a kind of small group discussion. These kinds of questions that I ask here are going to be a little bit more involved than the class-wide discussions. They're going to require a lot more actual conversation to flesh out the ideas. So in order to make this happen, I think many of you have probably taken online discussions already, and where you get this sort of respond to something and then respond to something others have posted. This is an elaboration of that I think provides a little more structure and guidance to how that works. So there will be 3 different roles that each participant will take on in their group. Each week you will be in one of those 3 roles. There'll be a leader, there'll be 2 responders, and then there will be a synthesizer. The leader is going to start the discussion off. The responders are going to keep the discussion going. That is, they're going to ask for probing kind of questions and deepen the initial post that the leader posted. And then the synthesizers are going to come in at the back end and sort of summarize the entire conversation and synthesize what people have said. So those are the 3 basic roles. Though I should say everyone will be involved in the overall discussion phase after the responders have responded to whatever the discussion leader has posted. So let's look at how this particular structure is going to work. So this will start on Tuesdays, and by Tuesday at noon, each of the discussion leaders needs to have posted their response, their initial response to the question. Then there'll be a 24-hour period where the responders have a chance to respond to that post, and both responders must, in that 24-hour period, respond to whatever it is that the discussion leader has said. So by noon on Wednesday, both responders in the group need to have posted their responses. Wednesday afternoon into Thursday will be an open conversation, and I will be on the board checking to see what people are talking about. And you all should be on the board as well, sort of furthering the conversation. Again, think of this in the same way that you would a small group conversation in a class. You're all together, and it's a sort of free-floating conversation. And people are bouncing ideas and saying, wait a minute, I don't really understand that. What did you mean by that? How should we think about this? Mark said this. Do we really think that that's the case, right? So think of it in those ways, right? And then on Thursday, by Thursday at 8 p.m., the synthesizer will have had to have posted their synthesis of all of what's going on. And at that point, all of the group members can also, again, chime in to sort of add to what the group synthesizer has said, but the synthesizer must post by 8 p.m. So you can see if we scroll down a little further, I've bracketed out what each of those discussion roles look like. So read through this and make sure you understand. I want to say especially for those who are responders, you don't want to respond with simple kinds of responses. You don't want to say, oh yes, I agree with you, or no, I don't really think that's the case, or that's an interesting way to look at it. That's not what we're after here. You want to probe. You want to go deeper. You want to say, hey, wait a minute. Did you think about the concept of class this way? Marx talks about 2 classes. Is this right? I mean, is this really reflecting how we ought to think about the world? So you want to be going really deep with your responses to that, raising things that perhaps the discussion leader didn't think about, addressing concerns about them stating things that aren't quite jiving with your understanding of Durkheim. This is a conversation point to clarify our understanding of a particular issue. And similarly with the synthesizers, you don't want to just sort of end by saying, okay, that's great, we're done. You really want to bring together the conversation. What were the key salient points that each person raised? What should be our kind of takeaway message out of this conversation? You can see down here, because you're organized into groups of 4, we will rotate across the weeks as to who is in what particular role. So we won't begin these conversations until week 3. And there we will have the person who's assigned. I'm going to basically assign each person a number, and I will let you know what your number is in the coming weeks once I put you into groups. And if you're number 1 in the group, that means you're going to be the leader in week 1. If you're number 1 in the group, what that means is in week 5, for our second group discussion, you're going to be the synthesizer. And then in week 6, you're going to be one of the responders. And in week 7, you'll be another responder. And then back to the leader in week 10. If you're number 2 in the group, week 3, you're going to be the responder. Week 5, you'll be the leader. Week 6, you'll be the synthesizer. Week 7, you'll be a responder again, etc. So I hope this gives you a sort of basic understanding of how I've structured these groups, as well as what it is that you're going to be doing in the groups. Of course, remember, you want to be critical. You want to be deeply engaged in these conversations, but you also must be respectful. These are human beings that you're interacting with. Though you're interacting in a virtual space, these are not random people. These are real people with ideas, and you want to treat them as such, even when you vehemently disagree with what they're trying to say. So with that, on that note, I think we'll end. Let me know if you have any questions about how this discussion is organized. I understand it's probably a little different than the way you're used to in some of your classes. So please let me know if there's any clarifications that I can make to make sure that you're on the right track here. I look forward to some great conversations this semester, and I'm excited to get them started. Take care.